My adorable cat is joining us for this Q&A. Okay, I hosted a Q&A on my Instagram and you guys hit me with some pretty interesting questions, so let's just hop right into it. I post a lot. You know, it's time for me to leave Instagram for a little while. So if you're watching this, you're probably going to be the first one to know that. I'm going to leave for a few weeks. Not that anybody asked. Got them to load. Let's get it. Let's start from the bottom. What is your meal prep routine? I don't really know how to cook, to be honest. So the meal prepping that you saw on my Instagram was because I bought meal preps. That's my routine. Know your weaknesses. What are your tips for staying in routine and keeping motivated for the gym? My number one piece of advice would be go when you really, really don't feel like going. Once you get into that habit, it's pretty hard to start missing days. But it starts with like going when you're feeling a little sick, or going when you had a really long day at work, or going when you just are genuinely tired or lazy. Toughing it out through those specific days make all the other days so much easier. And that's like my number one tip. Secondly, get rid of the word motivated from your vocabulary, because motivation is kind of lame. It comes and it goes, and it's not really reliable. It's not a source of energy, really. It's just a source of excitement. That's how I like to look at it. So when someone feels motivated to go to the gym, that might be because they saw something on YouTube or they saw a cool motivational speech, and that's why they're called motivational speeches. They really just give you that little spark, but they don't gas up your flame. They don't fuel it constantly. That's not what motivation does. Motivation is kind of just a shove, but the thing that keeps you going is discipline, I think. So you should want what you're working for. So if you don't genuinely want a healthier body or a healthier lifestyle, then you're only going to get so far with motivation anyways. So definitely try to get rid of that in your vocabulary. If you could change one thing about yourself physically, what would it be? My teeth. So I have pretty below average teeth. They're kind of crooked, but I have braces on, so it's in the process. What was your biggest achievement of 2019 and your biggest goal of 2020? I would say my biggest achievement of 2019 was joining Nominal full time, and I consider that an achievement because it's risky. Obviously, it's a startup business. It's owned by my best friend, so of course, mixing friendship and business is always tough. But I think it took a lot of communication on both of our ends, a lot of trust, a lot of faith, and it was a leap of faith in some senses. But Akram did a great job of making me feel secure in that transition as I moved away from my full-time job at Dutch Bros as a leader trainer there, and coming over to Nominal as an operational manager. So he made that transition really smooth, but I still consider it an achievement to kind of have worked my way to that point, proving myself worthy of a job like that and proving myself reliable as a manager of a startup company. I had to wear a lot of hats, and I still do in the company, so it's something that Akram entrusted me with, and I really, really appreciate that. So that was my biggest achievement. My biggest goal of 2020 would probably be just to take care of my family. Just financially and emotionally, I want to be able to be their support beam. And yeah, so I'm really excited to take Nominal to the next level. I think that's also the sub goal is taking Nominal one step up, loving my cats a little harder. And yeah, so those are my main goals for 2020. I also want to write a poetry book. Poetry book 2020. Comment that down below if you're watching this part of the video. Poetry book 2020. Comment. Keep me accountable. Everyone deals with stress differently. How do you handle it? I love this question. Quran and zoning in on my prayers, I think, are my first go-to priority when I'm feeling overwhelmed or my mind feels clustered or anything like that. I start to double up on prayer and dua and stuff like that. For any non-Muslims watching, I'm a Muslim. I was raised Muslim, and so I have that support beam to kind of rely on. That's sort of where I go the first moment I feel stressed. Another thing is I spend a lot more time with friends and family when I'm feeling stressed. I don't close off, really. I close off when I get upset, but when I feel stressed, I like to go out with my friends. I like to see movies. I like to listen to new music. I like to write poetry a lot. So all those things, something to kind of just, stimulate my mind in a different way. That's how I deal with stress most of the time. And the gym. The gym's an awesome, awesome way to just, exert all that extra energy and kind of zone in on one thing and not let your mind be so clustered. Do you create your poetry in one sitting? That's a really good question. A lot of people, I think, would be surprised to find out that yes, a lot of my poetry is created in one sitting. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's like created from start to finish in like a day. Sometimes the idea stems, like let's say I'm on a road trip or I'm not at home or something like that. The idea forms and then I get it into my notes or something like that, and then I get home and I work on it a little bit, and maybe I'll change like a line or two within the next couple of days. But for the most part, I like to work on it, not necessarily from start to finish in one sitting, but maybe from so it won't go from idea to notes to paper to posted on Instagram in one sitting. That typically doesn't happen. Usually the idea comes, and I have a lot of ideas like running through my head. So like sometimes they're not new ones, but just like this concept that intrigues me a lot. And so that will form, and then I'll come up with maybe like one or two or three lines that I know will be in there somewhere. And then when I sit down, I'll stitch those things together, come up with an ending and a beginning, and kind of stitch together in one poem. Some of them, there are a couple that have taken like weeks to write, to be honest. I just couldn't really get the emotion proper in some of them, and some of them I've written in like 30 minutes, like just a stream of consciousness, and I'll kind of just let it rip and let the emotion speak for itself without trying to like nitpick every single word and stanza. And they all get responded to differently. I've never noticed that, oh, the one that I took longer on got a better response, or I knew this one wouldn't get a better response because I didn't take long on it. I typically just try to match the emotion with what I'm feeling. There's no real criteria to judge how long should I have spent on this poem. How has your poetry changed over time? I think it's become more story-esque. It sounds more and more like I'm telling a story, which makes sense because I'm very much into fiction writing. I wrote 2 novels before and during college, and so I think when I first started my poetry, it was a little bit more metaphorical and not as like storyteller. But now that I'm kind of going back to my roots of like my fiction writing, and a lot of my poems are fiction. Sorry to break it to you, they're not all about me. Very little of them are about me or my own struggles. A lot of the times they're about other people, other struggles that I've learned through listening to people's experiences and things like that, or just completely fictionalized events that I don't know anything about, but I am intrigued by that concept. And so you'll probably notice like my last handful of poems are very at you stories. They're talking to the reader rather than being metaphorical and like analogical in the way they're written. So I think they're just becoming more story like. Sawyer Elms, my guy from a writing class that I had, says, "It's been a while. What are you excited for?" Poetry Book 2020. How do you have so much damn energy? I don't know. I sleep a lot, to be honest. I typically get my 8 hours a day, which is dying, I think. Like, for some people, like, this theory of, like, oh, I work super hard and I only slept 5 hours today, and people start bragging about how little they slept. That's freaking lame. I sleep 8 hours every single night, and that definitely helps. A really unhealthy caffeine addiction is one. I listen to very high energy electronic music. It's like my favorite genre. I listen to dubstep in the gym and things like that. So I think my music taste typically like reflects in the way I act. And then thirdly, I would say like the reason I have a lot of energy is because I just want things very badly. I want financial freedom, so I have a lot of energy at work. And I want a body transformation by like Ramadan, so I put in a lot of time at the gym. So I think just wanting something is a source of energy, and I think a lot of people fail to harness that properly because they don't zone in on like really wanting something. So whatever you want, whatever your goal is, you should really focus in on wanting it more, and you'll see it reflect in your energy. Not a question, but keep making vlogs. Thanks, I'll do my best. When are we getting the pizza recipe? As soon as me and my mom make pizza. Unfortunately, my channel's not big enough to dedicate a whole day to making pizza when in reality the family doesn't want to eat pizza. So right now I'm kind of just waiting for the family to start craving the pizza, and so I can give you guys that low carb pizza recipe. I promise it's coming soon, I just don't know when yet. What did you study in college? Do you have any advice for those in school? I studied creative writing with a minor in film and media studies. I absolutely loved it. My advice to people in school would be to take it seriously, but don't overwhelm yourself with grades and extracurricular activities and things like that. Of course, it depends on the field you're in. I was an arts major, so really there's not much pressure on like my GPA. I knew that I wasn't going to go to a master's program, so there's not much pressure there. So take it seriously, but have fun if you're in school. Like school is like literally some of the best time of your life. Make new friends, make new connections. It's all about who you know. And yeah, just make memories. That's my advice. If my printer fails, what do I do? I have no idea. Another question: how do you find the motivation to do everything that you do? Get motivation out of your vocabulary, swap it out with discipline, and want things more. Are you single? Yup. What inspires you to work out and write poetry when you have lack of motivation on days? Same question. The poetry specifically, I think your guys' support is a huge thing. Being able to post like a poem and getting like, and then I usually go to sleep after I write a poem. Like sometimes I'll be awake for like half an hour afterwards, but I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up like to 30, 35, one time up to 50 like DMs, and that's like surreal to me. Like I'm not famous, I don't have a ton of followers. I'm literally just posting my poems on my story. I like don't even post them on my feed. I don't send them to other poetry pages. I don't even have 1,000 followers on my page. So like the ratio of people reading the poem and replying and vocalizing their support is insane. And I think that definitely inspires me. Inspires is a great word rather than motivated. That inspires me to keep going. The poetry on days that I really don't feel like it, I just think of all the people who are actually taking time out of their day to swipe up on the poem and like text me about how much they liked it or about how much they were impacted by it, and that's just unreal to me. So that's what keeps me going. What's your go-to meal at Chipotle? White rice, black beans, double chicken, light fajita veggies, and then all the toppings except for lettuce. If you're not losing weight, even though you're in a caloric deficit, what do you do? Most likely, statistically speaking, you are not in a caloric deficit. That would be the most likely scenario, that you think you are. Now, if you truly are in a caloric deficit and your weight still doesn't seem to be going down, I would add weightlifting to your regimen. I would add cardio to your regimen. I would make sure you are sleeping enough 100%, and your water intake is a really big thing. And after that, I would just make sure someone's consistently weighing themselves, because sometimes they weigh themselves every week and they're losing weight between the two weigh-ins, but they don't know that because they're only weighing themselves Monday and Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they're losing weight and they actually trended downwards. But then on Sunday, they had extra sodium, extra water, maybe they ate a little bit later at night, and then they weigh themselves Monday morning and they're actually back up a pound or two. And it seems like they didn't lose weight because these 2 points are the only data they have. But all this weight loss went undocumented, right? So if you weigh yourself every morning, you'll find maybe you are losing weight, and there's just certain things like pickles or high sodium foods or ramen noodles that you like to eat on Sunday night. That's triggering a little bit of water retention, so you're gaining weight, but you didn't know that you lost all that weight. So definitely stay consistent on the way you track yourself, because you might be losing weight and not knowing it. Also, make sure you're tracking your progress in a way other than the scale. The scale is really reliable. It's really easy to make your weight fluctuate. You can just, like I said, eat really late at night. You can have extra water the day before. You can have a lot more sodium. Things like that will spike up your weight, and that's not a reliable way to see if you're progressing or not. Take progress pictures. Keep track of how you're making progress in the gym, and you might see you're actually making progress in a lot of different areas, but not necessarily the scale. So track your progress in different ways and see what happens. When do you feel the most inspired to write poems? I'm a huge fan of your poetry, by the way. Thank you. This is from a page I don't even know, so seriously, thanks. That means a lot to me, honestly. I typically feel most inspired when I'm feeling something. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a bad feeling. Like a lot of my poetry is like depressing or like lonely or whatever. But sometimes I write those poems when I'm in like a really, really good mood. So like something really good will happen, or I had a really good workout and I'm just on like this emotional high. And I think any time my emotions are on high, I love to write. Because I like to convey not necessarily the emotions that I'm currently feeling, but just emotion in general. So if I'm feeling really, really happy, I might drop like the saddest poem you've ever read in your life. And it's funny because people will be like, "Who hurt you?" And I'm like, "Nobody. I'm so happy." I just like telling these stories when I'm at this emotional level, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'm feeling really, really down and I'll write like a really happy poem, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, he's in a good place," or "I can be in a good place." And in reality, I wrote it from like a really dark mood. And so the poetry doesn't necessarily reflect why I felt inspired to write that. But to answer your question, when do I write my poetry or when do I feel inspired to? typically when I'm on an emotional high of any sort. I like to pass on that high in my writing. So, and this right here is the last question that we'll be doing, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Are there any cultural norms that you feel are too far fetched? I don't really have the right to speak on like a lot of cultural norms because, of course, they all stem from different origins. But the one cultural norm that comes to mind is marrying from your own country. And I think that's pretty cool, right? Especially if there's a language barrier from like anybody outside of your country, then I can see how it could be like a really big struggle to marry somebody from outside of your culture or outside of your country. But I filmed weddings for 7 years, and it is absolutely beautiful seeing two cultures come together. I filmed a wedding, and I think it was a Pakistani bride and a Syrian husband. He, like, as a surprise, delivered like his whole speech in Urdu. And I'm like, that's amazing. I was shocked, and I don't even know the guy. Like, I don't know how unlike him this was, and I was just floored by this. And the whole family was just so shocked. He apparently was like learning Urdu from like the bride's uncle, like low key, and I'm like, see, like, you don't even get the opportunity to do something that beautiful if you only marry within your culture or you only marry within people who speak your language. Language is like the one thing that you can learn. You know, you can't learn to have a good heart and you can't learn to be generous. A lot of these things are kind of just how you grew up and how you were brought up as a child, among several other things, I'm sure. But language to be a barrier, I think that's pretty ridiculous, to be honest. But yeah, so I would say, you know, that closed mindedness of needing to marry within this culture or needing to marry within this country. And some people are even like, you need to marry within this city in the country. What does that even mean? Why? What does that say about somebody's heart? Like, you know, it's pretty bad. So, heart first, always. I don't think that's that weird, but some cultures out there are like, no, not heart first. Where were you born first? You know, and I think that's really sad cuz like I didn't pick where I was born. I was born in Arizona, but that doesn't say anything about me. So, that is a really weird cultural norm that I think is super far-fetched, and I hope it dies an embarrassing demise very soon. So, generations to come can mix cultures and have beautiful babies and learn multiple languages, please God. And that about wraps this Q&A up. So thank you very much for watching. I hope my editing helped make this Q&A a little bit bearable to watch. If you made it all the way here, remember, comment Poetry Book 2020 and I will deliver. You guys keep me accountable. Thank you for watching. Hit the little thumbs up because that's my form of validation on this platform, so thanks. Subscribe if you haven't already. Damn, this is weird. I've never said like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. I can get in the habit of saying those things. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in vlog number 5. Peace out.